Bonomo. I'm president and CEO of PennFuture, a statewide environmental organization that advocates for clean air, pure water, and a healthy climate. Wonderful to have everyone online together, joining in this wrap-up celebration, honoring all of your work over this past week. You've been learning about and championing restoration and protection of Pennsylvania's freshwater resources. Pennsylvania's waters are just a remarkable gift for those of us that live here, and such an attraction for recreationists and others that visit us here. We're a really water-rich state, as you know. We've got 65,000 miles of streams. We're second only to Alaska in that regard. But they're not just any streams. We've got mighty rivers that flow into iconic American bays and gulfs and lakes, like the gorgeous Delaware with its Pocono and Catskill Mountain headwaters, Western Pennsylvania's Allegheny, Monongahela, and Youghiogheny rivers that sit at the headwaters of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers and make their way to the Gulf of Mexico. The Great Lake Erie and the Genesee River that flows into the Great Lake Ontario, and of course, the Susquehanna and Potomac rivers draining streams, brooks, creeks, from 40 of our 67 counties into the Chesapeake Bay. Like many of you, I was shaped by my love of water and all these places. I owe my life's work to a stream called Nescopec Creek, a place that made me an advocate and an activist. A long time ago, when I was in my 20s as a Sierra Club volunteer, I became involved in a fight to keep the Nescopec Creek free-flowing. Thankfully, we won that fight, but our fight for clean water is far from over. The lower reaches of that very same Nescopec Creek receives the largest acid mine drainage on the east coast of the United States. And as a result, it's a dead stream for many miles as it makes its way to the Susquehanna. But bad water quality doesn't stop eccentric river rats and paddlers from kayaking through the canyon of the Nescopec. We've been told that we won't have the technology or resources to ever clean up this stretch of my beloved stream. But that's not something I'm willing to accept. I dream of a day when the Nescopec is clean and when our other impaired streams are clean. And the Nescopec will be clean from its ridgetop springs to its outflow into the Susquehanna. A day when this economically depressed part of southern Luzerne County that I sit in right now has more small businesses like canoe liveries and guide services and other amenities that depend on clean water. But that's only going to happen when this world-class stretch of whitewater flows with clean water, not mine drainage. And so I thank all of you for your commitment to steward Pennsylvania's waters and for being part of so many of the campaigns around the state to protect and restore water quality. And I urge you to seek out the solace and thrill and joys that these waters can offer us in this difficult time. I want to thank the wonderful PennFuture team that worked so hard in front of the cameras and behind them, if you will, to make this important week happen. And of course, thanks again to all of you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, a former president of PennFuture, a former Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay person, a former Audubonner, and so much more, Secretary of Pennsylvania's Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Cindy Adams Dunn.
Thank you, Jacqui, and thank you for including me on this, and thanks for the good work all of you have done all week to really highlight the value of Pennsylvania streams and rivers. You know, Jacqui, your comments about the Nescopec reminded me, I first met you when I was at Alliance for Chesapeake Bay, and you were working so hard on the Nescopec, and you know, I first met you then, and your undying efforts on behalf of the Nescopec and all the streams and rivers of Pennsylvania is really to be commended. And thanks for the good work of PennFuture and all the allies on the phone here for your great work all week and advocating for rivers and the good work you do year in and year out. Some of these efforts take decades of work. When I met Jacqui, I remember I met a guy named Bernie McGurl upstream on the Lackawanna, which flows into the North Branch of the Susquehanna. And I'm proud to say that this year, the Lackawanna was named DCNR's River of the Year, Pennsylvania's River of the Year by DCNR and PEC. And that's, that's due to the undying restoration efforts of the Lackawanna organization that Bernie leads. To be honest, decades ago when I first saw the Lackawanna, it ran orange. I thought to myself, boy, they probably aren't going to be able to do much with this river. It had been so damaged by coal. But amazingly, there are trout in parts of the Lackawanna. There's an annual sojourn on the Lackawanna. So the restoration efforts that many of you are involved in are critical and are really essential to bringing back parts of Pennsylvania. On DCNR forest land right now, there are 35,000 acres of abandoned mine land, and some of them are being reclaimed through some federal funds we have access to and through the good work of nonprofits, some of whom are on the phone. So again, restoration is a key part of what we're doing. Another restoration effort that many of you are directly involved in, in Pennsylvania, think about it, we're called Pennsylvania, Penn's Woods. Our natural habitat is forested, and we're right now slightly less than 60% forested. But a critical place where forest land has been lost is along our streams and rivers. So we're working with hundreds of partners on restoring buffers on streams and rivers across Pennsylvania. Some of it's driven by the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Implementation Plan, but it's really driven by Pennsylvanians' desire to see clean water close to home, to really restore that natural land-water interface so that the water can be cooler in the face of a changing climate, and that it can be filtered and cleaned from upstream nutrients and sediments and pollutants coming off of farms, parking lots, lawns, etc. Sitting here in my neighborhood along the Conner de Gwinnett right now, I see all kinds of chemicals being applied on lawns, and I think to myself, the poor Conner de Gwinnett, here it comes for the next rainfall. So we all have a lot of work to do on restoration, and thanks to all of you who are out there planting buffers. I think about buffers in a broad way. With Earth Day coming up and with all the tree planting efforts that go on around Earth Day, and many are continuing individually, not as groups, but that connection between trees, water, and climate is essential. If we meet the 95,000 acre buffer goal that DCNR's alliance of partners has set, we would sequester 5 million tons of carbon in those buffers alone. So again, these things are all related, and the buffers that are planted shade and cool the streams of Pennsylvania as well as clean them. Again, looking at the land-water interface, land conservation is a critical part of it. Many people on this conference are very involved in land conservation. I'm pleased to say that in 5 years, with help from a lot of partners and additional funders, and with the Keystone Fund and Environmental Stewardship Fund that so many of you have really helped with, and recently with the Land and Water Conservation Fund and its increased funding and its permanent status that many of you have fought for, we were able to save about 100,000 acres conserved in either direct purchase or in easements. And that doesn't count the farmland preservation programs. That's just the natural lands preservation program. Again, we're hoping that all of you will join us in seeking permanent reauthorization, permanent funding, and full funding. I mean, seeking full funding for LWCF. We've got the permanent funding, but seeking the full funding so that we can advance conservation to the maximum and really secure conserved lands across Pennsylvania in the critical habitats. So again, I applaud everything you're doing, what you're doing for clean rivers, what you have done to advocate for the wonderful streams and rivers of Pennsylvania that Jacqui talks about. Will also help with climate, and will also help with the future of this planet. So I applaud everything you're doing, and please feel free to connect with what we're doing at DCNR. I'll provide some of the social media through the chat box, but you'll see that there's a lot of things going on as people are at home in work from home situations due to COVID, that they find themselves a little more time to connect with nature. We're seeing visitorship like we have never seen in March and April in the parks and forest lands of Pennsylvania. It's a reflection of people's desire to get outdoors. And with these people who are newly connecting to nature, all of us will find allies in conservation. So thanks, stay safe, look forward to your good work and our good work together for the future.
Thank you, Secretary Dunn. My name is Stephanie Wein, and I'm the Clean Water and Conservation Advocate at PennEnvironment, which is a statewide citizens-based environmental advocacy group with over 150,000 members, activists across the Commonwealth and in every watershed. I'm joining you today from the Delaware Watershed in Philadelphia. And I've spent the week, along with a lot of our partners on the call, having the chance to bring the voices of our members of all these incredible organizations to our leaders in the state capitol to talk about the importance of protecting our natural resources and our water in this critical time more than ever. And in these meetings, there was one theme, that protecting Pennsylvania's land, protecting Pennsylvania's parks and forests, like Secretary Dunn spoke to, and protecting our water resources, whether that's up in our headwater streams or what's coming out of our cap, it doesn't happen without concerted effort, without constant vigilance, and without funding. And I've had the chance to make the case along with all of our partner groups across the week for why funding our resource agencies like the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and our interstate water and river commissions is not some bonus that we can bypass when times are hard. It is part of the core and essential function of government, and can't be sidelined as the Commonwealth moves through this crisis. And I am honored today to introduce to everybody one of our most steadfast advocates on the Hill, which is Representative Leanna Kruger. So she represents Delaware County in the 161st District, where she served since 2015. But she was a conservation and environmental advocate long before that as the director of the Sustainable Business Network. And so I want to invite her now to say a few words as we mark Clean Water Week. Representative, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, folks. It's great to be with you today, and I'm so grateful for the advocacy of you all and of the groups who are on the call today. Now more than ever, we need your voices to be heard. We're all doing lots of multitasking these days, right? And I'm simultaneously on a briefing for the Southeastern delegation about the budget process. And we're going to need to keep an eye on this year as we go into budget negotiations. But first, I want to talk about why clean water matters to me. This is something that I cared about long before I served in the legislature. I got to lead an organization for 8 years that was made up of businesses who really were trying to do the right thing for the environment and the right thing for their employees, an organization called the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia. And that's actually how I became acquainted with a number of the organizations that are here today, long before I had any thoughts of running for office. And I know that life has changed a lot over the past month as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And one of the things that's helped keep me and my 8-year-old son sane is going to visit a creek that's close by. I live in Wallingford and Nether Providence in Delaware County, and we're lucky enough to have a park just about a half block away called Houston Park. And there's a tiny little stream there that runs eventually into the Ridley Creek, which is a great waterway here in Delaware County that north of us goes to Ridley Creek State Park. And it's been going and walking along the stream and throwing rocks in and hearing the birds and getting outside that's helped keep my son and I grounded during this challenging time. So this is personal, right? When we talk about protecting access to clean water, we talk about protecting access for folks who love to fish. That's such a important and popular hobby here in Pennsylvania. We're talking about supporting it for folks who like to boat and to kayak, and then folks like us who just like to walk along the water and to hear the sound of the creek and to feel more grounded that way. So as a legislator, though, I have to tell you that clean air and clean water sometimes are thought of as bad words by some of my colleagues in Harrisburg. I've had the privilege of serving on the environmental committee in the almost 5 years that I've been in office, and I also serve as in the appropriations committee where all the budget bills come through. And without fail, when we are fighting a bill that the fracking industry wants, or attempting to fight back loosening regulations to keep our water clean, whenever I or my colleagues on those committees talk about clean water, folks get angry because they know that that's something that all of us value, no matter what our party affiliation is, and yet we're always fighting bills that would impact water quality in Pennsylvania. On the environmental committee, unfortunately right now, it's chaired by a gentleman named Darrell Metcalf, who doesn't believe climate change exists, and the bills that we see in committee are never the good ones that would actually expand water protections in Pennsylvania. Rather, we're always fighting bills that would jeopardize water quality. This year alone, we fought back a bill that would take fracking wastewater and pour it on our roadways. And to de-ice them in the winter. And we know that there's radioactive material in those fluids, and yet they wanted to pour them on our roads, which would get into our waterways and protect and potentially impact water quality in so many different ways. We also fought back a bill that would allow companies to spill more of that fluid on the ground and not actually be responsible to clean it up. They changed it from just a couple of gallons to actually the size of a swimming pool at one point in one of the bills that we were fighting. So your advocacy is more important now than ever. As we go into budget negotiations this year, we need to make sure that we're not raiding restricted environmental funds to close budget gaps. We need to make sure that we're not loosening restrictions that keep our water safe, not just for us, but for future generations. Those are some of the things that I'll be on the lookout. And again, I know all of the wonderful groups who are here on this call will be listening. They've all got ears to the ground in Harrisburg, and I know that they alert their members when bad things are happening. And I can tell you, when you pick up the phone and make a call to your legislator, or when you send an email, those things matter. When you go online and put Facebook comments on their page or tweet back at them about the issues that matter to you, it gets their attention, especially if you're reaching out to the folks whose districts you live in. So now more than ever, we need to hear from you. And thanks again for all of the great work that you've done this week and every week to protect our water in Pennsylvania. And that was my time. Thanks, folks.
Awesome. Thank you, Representative. It is personal and our advocacy does matter. So, hey everyone, good afternoon and happy Friday. I appreciate you all joining us online for Pennsylvania's Clean Water Week. I know I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Today and really every day is truly a celebration of our mighty and majestic waterways. Let me tell you, this webinar couldn't have come at a more perfect time, as a Delaware watershed was recently named American River's 2020 River of the Year. So how about a virtual round of applause? We appreciate all of our trusted partners who made this achievement possible, and I know I personally can't wait to actively recreate on the river once this pandemic is behind us. So for those of you on the call that I haven't met, my name is Knutson, State Policy Manager for the Coalition of the Delaware Watershed. For today's presentation, I'll share a little bit about CDRW and our work, and then transition to the spotlight to the breathtaking and scenic watershed. So here we go. The Coalition is a network of about 160 organizations, all dedicated to protecting the natural resources within the Delaware River Basin. 84 of these members exist within the state of Pennsylvania, and they range from your small groups on the front lines of water protection to your national environmental groups advocating for conservation policy. CDRW adds value to our members through advocacy support, communications assistance, information sharing, network opportunities, and more. The list goes on and on of what we do. But there's also that strategic policy component of the work we do by making sure that these waterways are protected for generations to come. Luckily the Coalition is able to continue this important work from our very own homes, and will continue to be that advocate for our beloved critters, streams, forests, etc. Events like the Virtual Week of Action are just wonderful examples of how CDRW can leverage the strength and power of our members as one voice to inform and educate decision makers throughout the watershed. It's actually been really fun to see representatives be so encouraged by our messaging and willing to champion clean water throughout Pennsylvania, especially during these uncertain times. So again, thanks to everyone on the call who have joined us, either virtually this year or at the Capitol in years past. Your efforts are appreciated and definitely don't go unseen. And as you can imagine, there will be difficult decisions and conversations ahead regarding Pennsylvania's state budget. So it's pivotal that we continue to advocate for maintained levels of funding for our state's environmental agencies, as well as regional basin commissions. Now, if you've been or seen the Delaware watershed, it's easy to understand why it's chosen as River of the Year, especially during these uncertain times. It's a safe haven throughout the region and provides that sense of mental and physical calmness. I'm fortunate that the river is located near my office, and it's the perfect reminder of why I do this work each and every day. As many on the call know, the Delaware River is one of Mid-Atlantic's most important and unique natural resources by flowing through 4 states and supplying drinking water to more than 13.3 million people across the region, while supplying a total of 5.6 million to the residents of Pennsylvania. The mighty Delaware River begins in the Catskill Mountains, flows south through Trenton and Philadelphia, and eventually reaches the Atlantic Ocean. So I hope everyone on the call is ready for some fun watershed facts. The Delaware supports the 2nd largest population of migrating shorebirds in North America and provides habitat for over 200 fish species, including the endangered Atlantic sturgeon, as well as having the largest population of horseshoe crabs in the country. I think that's pretty awesome. This waterway is incredibly diverse, from the cold streams of the upper Delaware to the bustling cityscapes and to the Delaware Bay area, all of which support a unique blend of communities, wildlife, and landscapes. Economically speaking, the watershed supports over $25 billion in annual economic activity, which includes recreation, ecotourism, hunting and fishing, etc., but also provides an estimated $21 billion in ecosystem services to the region, which includes water filtration, carbon sequestration, and of course our prized habitats like forests and wetlands. Also, with 43% of Pennsylvania's population living within the Delaware River watershed, again, it's crucial that we continue to advocate for policies and protections for these treasured waterways. Now more than ever, it's important to find and value those places of natural beauty. I hope everyone on the call is continuing to stay safe and healthy during these uncertain times and being innovative in new ways that you can enjoy your parks while physically distancing yourself, of course, by being outdoors. So again, thank you all for joining today. That's all I have on the Delaware River watershed. Next, I'd like to introduce Mike Campbell, professor of biology from Mercyhurst University, whose work and research has been dedicated to water organisms. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm sitting here in Erie looking out my window, and it's snowing pretty heavy. And that kind of defines our corner of the state, opposite corner than where a lot of you seem to be coming from. My experience and my position as a biologist at Mercyhurst, I owe largely to early experiences as a child outdoors on flowing waters. I grew up in the Harrisburg area up on Blue Mountain, and there were little streams and springs within walking distance of my house. We lived on a little cottage on top of the mountain. And ever since I was about 9 or 10 years old, my early experiences in fresh water were often face first in the water, drinking it from the springs. And I know now, because I've gone back to my home frequently over the years, that I wouldn't want to be sticking my face in those places anymore, in those flowing water habitats. But I remember having a high school biology teacher that let me take a dissecting microscope home, and I got some water samples from those little streams on the mountain and looked at them under a microscope and realized that there were an interesting variety of aquatic insects and crustaceans that live in those little springs and streams. And that's probably where my early interest in organisms as indicators of water quality was born. I ended up going to East Stroudsburg right on the Delaware River for my undergraduate and my master's training in biology, and focused mainly on aquatic biology. And I remember the first time I ever went trout fishing was in the Broadhead Creek, which flows into the Delaware right by East Stroudsburg. After Stroudsburg, I ended up in Texas at Texas A&M University, focusing on limnology. And I came to appreciate in Texas how much we take for granted our water resources here in Pennsylvania, because especially Central Texas and West Texas, water is extremely scarce. And so protecting water quality and water quantity was really a huge focus of my training at Texas A&M. And now I'm on Lake Erie and am blessed in living on one of our inland seas in the United States. And fortunately, we've got plenty of water, and water quality is pretty good. It's better now than it was when I was a child, and it's still got problems, but I think we all should be sort of inspired by the restoration that has taken place in our Pennsylvania Lake Erie coast, and take that as inspiration. Is if we can take a dead lake and make it alive again, we should be able to, even with enough patience and diligence, restore all of those thousands of miles of acid mine drainage impacted streams in our state. My heart and my head are still in headwaters, and I wanted to emphasize that I think that Pennsylvania's headwaters should be an important focus of our effort to restore the streams in Pennsylvania, because I believe that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of miles of unmapped and unmeasured small headwaters tributaries that may still contain remnant populations and communities of some of the freshwater invertebrates that we unfortunately don't find in some of our degraded tributaries downstream. So I've taken the small streams as an important focus of the research that I try to get my students to do as part of their thesis projects here. And I still am fascinated when I look through a dissecting microscope at the gills and the various adaptations on freshwater insects when you've got them live under a dissecting microscope. I need to wrap this up, so I just want to say I am so overwhelmed and impressed with the quality of the work that's being done in Pennsylvania, and in no small measure, I think we can attribute it to the organizations that are represented in this webinar, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of it. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Drew Robinson, who is a senior communications manager for the Choose Clean Water Coalition. And Drew has an interesting background. He's from New Jersey, but he did his undergraduate training at Dickinson in Pennsylvania. And I think he lives in Maryland, but has done a lot of work in Virginia. So he's got a good perspective on things. And he's also an Eagle Scout, which I think is a very impressive thing too. So take it away.
Thanks, Mike, for that warm introduction. Yeah, I've gotten around the Chesapeake Bay Watershed quite a bit, which has been a real pleasure. So as Mike said, I'm the communications guy for the Choose Clean Water Coalition. The coalition is focused on the Chesapeake Bay Watershed, so right in the middle of Pennsylvania. And it represents more than 250 groups throughout the Chesapeake Bay Watershed, working to harness the collective power of all these groups to advocate for clean water, clean rivers and streams. We do a lot of work coordinating policy and messaging so that all of these groups, the greater clean water community, can speak louder with one collective voice. We focus on several different issue areas. I'll just run through them real quick. We focus on agriculture. Obviously, that's a major issue that contributes to water quality. Communications, again, going back to speaking with the same voice. equity, which is DEIJ, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, is a huge, important part of our work. Federal affairs, a lot of our groups that we represent don't have the capacity to lobby and advocate on the federal level, so we provide the tools, resources, and capacity to do that. Energy, we focus a lot of our time also on shale and fracking in Pennsylvania and making sure that water quality is protected there. Stormwater is an issue that gets lots of people excited. And TMDL is our last work group, was, of course, the total maximum daily load, working to make sure that the pollution goals are achieved in a timely manner. And our work in Pennsylvania is absolutely critical to our work to cleaning up the bay and its rivers and streams. You know, as the saying goes, as goes the Susquehanna, so goes the bay. Over half of the bay's freshwater flow comes from Susquehanna River. And so it's critical that we're working in Pennsylvania, and some of our members in Pennsylvania are the cream of the crop, really. Doing just absolutely amazing work amidst challenging circumstances, particularly now. On a personal note, I wanted to share quickly of why I do this work. I first became aware of the need for clean water when I was a little boy. There was a pond a short walk from my childhood home that was incredibly polluted, and the thought of swimming or eating fish out of there would be repulsive. Conversely, when I visited my grandparents every summer in Cape Cod, there was a pond where I spent many hours swimming and recreating in, and walking along the shoreline, catching tadpoles and frogs. And the juxtaposition between those two bodies of waters was striking and really formative in shaping my environmental ethos. And, fast forward a few years, as Mike mentioned, I was a student at Dickinson College in the heart of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed there in Cumberland County. I spent a lot of time outdoors, enjoying the beauty of the area, from hiking Wagner's Gap, watching all the hawks fly by, to kayaking and kind of to Gwinnett Creek. And I've learned a lot about Pennsylvania's waterways since. One of my favorite stats I wanted to throw out there about Pennsylvania, and it's a water stat. It has 83,000 miles of streams, which is second only to Alaska. Pretty amazing. And it's my privilege now to work for clean water throughout the whole Chesapeake Bay region. And working in communications, I'm often thinking about what messages resonate. And I learned this several years ago, that talking about fighting for clean water for future generations was a really solid talking point. And that talking point took a deeper meaning a little more than a year ago, when my wife and I welcomed our son Nathaniel. And now I understand why that messaging and about future generations resonates so deeply, and it certainly does for me. But enough about me. I'd like to transition to introducing Jean Veno from the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. Jean is the Director of Governmental Affairs and Public Advocacy at the Commission. And the work of the Commission is really critical, ensuring proper management of local waterways, and from monitoring bay cleanup efforts to providing technical support for implementing the Watershed Implementation Plan, or as the WIP, as many of us know it, permitting related to water withdrawals and consumptive water use. So a lot of great work from Jean, so take it away.
Well, Drew, thank you, and congratulations on your new addition to your family. When Emily and Renee asked me to join this program, I was very honored to be on the same program with Secretary Dunn and Representative Kruger. And I want to again thank you both for all the work and advocacy you're doing on behalf of all the basins that we know, as we heard, the Delaware River Basin and the Susquehanna River Basin. The Susquehanna River Basin, as we know, drains almost 27,500 square miles of land. And I get to look at that beautiful river every day right outside the window of my office. It's a remarkable river in Harrisburg that runs through this beautiful state. And as we all said here today, there are a number of amazing tributaries and basin stories worthy that we could all share. But when I was asked to share an uplifting story, one of inspiration and of importance to me, I didn't have to look too far. I looked at the Lackawanna County area where I'm from. I'm from the Northeast. I spent half my life in the Scranton area. And I got to understand a lot about the Lackawanna County area and the area that had something to do with the Lackawanna County River. So my aspirational story is one I am very pleased to share about the Lackawanna County River. That's my topic for today. As I said, I've watched over 30 years of the stories of the Lackawanna River and the problems that occurred as a result of the many years of coal mining. Over 100 years of coal mining, coal was king in the Northeast. And the Lackawanna River is its headwaters. It began in Wein in Susquehanna County and flowed its way all the way down through the Susquehanna and through the northern area of eastern Pennsylvania. But 50 short years ago, the river was left for dead. The river had inefficient and substandard sewage systems. It was ravaged by the coal industry when coal was king, and the river was filled with acid waste. As public affairs and advocacy for the Susquehanna River Basin, I got to see firsthand the work that Drew Dehoff and Andy Gavin and his team has assembled to address acid mine drainage. You don't have to look too far to the work that they have accomplished just in the last decade on the areas of streams and tributaries that have been infiltrated with waste from coal mine runoff. I have a great deal of respect for Jamie Schallenberg and his team and Tom Clark, the program coordinator for acid mine drainage. And I had the opportunity to work with Tom and see the work firsthand that they are doing to rid these streams and tributaries of the waste that has flowed from these coal mines over the years. Yes, coal was king back then. And when I came to Harrisburg 30 years ago, I was called a coal cracker. I never quite understood that until I started to figure out what they were talking about. And the Lackawanna River was a big joke back in the Northeast. Many stories. There was no fish or aquatic life, as Secretary Dunn indicated. It was flowing orange. We would pass by the river when we would go through the cities of Scranton and the Eries, and the stream was just terrible. The Lackawanna River was just flowing, but not with health or quality of life. But today, no more. And I'm very pleased to say that the Lackawanna River is the 2020 River of the Year. What a true success story for all Lackawanna County citizens and for all Pennsylvanians for the work that you accomplished. I want to thank the many supporting groups gathered here today and in the work that you were able to accomplish for all of the aspects of not only Lackawanna River and the Susquehanna River, but all streams and tributaries. I have seen so much change in my time here at the Susquehanna River Basin. I've been honored to work with so many different people in the area of quality and clean water. This week of virtual activities that the PennFuture had established is just like none other. I think it was your first ever, Jacqui, and you are to be complimented. Emily and Renee and all who got involved in this week's activities did a tremendous job in showing what is needed to keep our waterways clean, our streams and our tributaries flowing. My aspirational story of the Lackawanna River is such that I now see the quality of work that can be done when we all come together. As Secretary Dunn had said numerous times, that we can shine a spotlight on so many different of our state's waterways. They are so important to the millions of lives who reside in Pennsylvania. That is so true. The SRBC staff, the many employees that I get to work with side by side, they appreciate all the advocacy PennFuture and the coalitions are doing. You are making a difference for us. And Representative Kruger, you are so correct that it's not about funding for the basins. It's about the importance of responding to what is needed to maintain our clean water for many people within the 4 million people that reside within the river basin. We thank you for your support and we look forward to working with you. Mr. Andrew Dehoff, our executive director, our commissioners, we view PennFuture and the coalitions gathered here today as our partners and as our catalyst for continued improvement for the working Pennsylvanians that depend on our clean waterways in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We want to thank you for inviting us to be a part of this important program. And we look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead as you continue to do the outstanding job as you have showcased this week in Pennsylvania Clean Water Week. All being done virtually, all being done through electronic communication. Just think what we can continue to do as we work hard in the coming months and years ahead. Thank you for having us. It's been on behalf of the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. We thank you.
Thank you so much, Gene. First off, as a Lackawanna County resident, I just want to echo everything Gene said. I'm very excited that the Lackawanna River is the river of the year this year. My name is Emily Rinaldi Baldauff. I'm PennFuture's campaigns director and CDRW's PA state lead. So I would like to acknowledge the volunteer planning committee that made Clean Water Week possible. So a huge thank you to myself, Renee, Ezra, and Jared from PennFuture, and Stephanie from PennEnvironment, Rachel from Sierra Club Pennsylvania, and Kelly from CDRW, and Drew and Mariah from Choose Clean Water Coalition. Without further ado, now I would like to introduce our next speaker. Collin O'Mara is the former Delaware Secretary of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. He had that seat from 2009 to 2014. In 2014, he took the seat of President and CEO of the National Wildlife Federation, and we are so pleased to have him today. Collin, I'd like to hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. And it is great to be with all of you. Okay, even though I'm a Delaware guy, I got to say, I love Pennsylvania's waterways and the potential they all hold. And I was really excited when I was given the opportunity to join you all today, because I want to just let you know how important the work that you are all doing nationally. You know, I mean, like I've spent time in Slippery Rock Creek. I've spent time, you know, in the Beaver. I've spent time on the Susquehanna and up by the Gap. I mean, I've probably transcended or kind of traversed, you know, a lot of the waterways in your incredible state. And I think Cindy set it up well at the beginning, talking about both kind of the promise and the peril, right? And one of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about today was that in this moment of needing a significant economic recovery, right? We're at 22 million individuals unemployed across the country. That number is probably going to climb close to 25 to 30 in the coming weeks. I just was on a call a little bit ago. It looks like almost 30% of folks under the age of 35 are currently unemployed. We are going to need a massive amount of work to kind of put the country back to work. And one of the things I wanted to kind of pitch to all of you today is that we should be thinking of the restoration of our natural resources as one of the most effective ways to get America working again. I mean, as Cindy said at the beginning, I mean, the number of folks that are turning to nature right now to really have that solace where they are able to enjoy the incredible outdoors and really just kind of protect their mental health during these tough times is remarkable. Now the question is, how do we continue that stewardship ethic and have it continue into hopefully some activism afterwards, and really make the case that natural resource restoration is not only important for the soul of the country and the ethics, but it's also important to getting our economy moving again. And we all know that when we invest in natural resources, we can create between 15, 16, 17, and 30 jobs per $1 million we spend. And so when we're thinking about doing work on the Mon and the Allegheny and in the Ohio, we're trying to clean up the Susquehanna in the Chesapeake watershed, or kind of getting all the way over to the Delaware and the Schuylkill, as we're trying to work on the Delaware River Basin, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work on private lands, there's a lot of work on public lands, there's a lot of work with municipalities. And so I would just encourage all of you to think about how we meet this moment and really make the case. Look, this isn't just because, folks like us, want to have healthy fish populations and, understand the ecological services and all the different values. It's that these are jobs, and these are jobs that are desperately, desperately, desperately needed. And so we're going to be making this case nationally. We're going to be working with a huge coalition. We are incredibly proud to be part of the coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, the Choose Clean Water coalition in the Chesapeake. We're trying to stand up a coalition right now for the Ohio, because I don't think the Ohio has received nearly the attention that it should, given the level of degradation, but also the level of opportunity as you're trying to bring back, especially parts of Appalachia. But from the National Wildlife Federation's point of view, we could not be more proud of the work that we get to do with all of you. We love PennFuture. Jacqui is one of my absolute favorite executive directors in the country. I think that the vision that they have and the ability to make progress, despite some pretty challenging political sledding, is phenomenal. Our team loves working with the folks that are, whether they're in Harrisburg or they're in Philly or out in Pittsburgh. They're really trying to do good work on the ground. But I do think that the opportunity that we have in front of us is to really kind of recreate what FDR did in the actually I just saw a note about it. I was going to say the same thing. Then in the 1930s. One of the reasons why Franklin Roosevelt invested so heavily in the Civilian Conservation Corps is that it put more people to work per dollar than any other investment in the entire New Deal. And so we can do the same thing again. And so I would just be encouraging folks to lean in to this economic opportunity and really make the case that we need to be creating jobs. And there's no better way to create jobs than cleaning up Pennsylvania's amazing waterways. We'll have your back in DC. We'll have obviously a lot of work to do in Harrisburg. I know Governor Wolf's been trying to invest more and more in this area as well. And so I think this could be an absolute huge win. And so I'll just end with one final note. This waterway, that the picture behind me, rather than seeing the blank wall that's actually behind me, is the Brandywine. It's my place to celebrate. I mean, as a Delawarean, setting aside that we broke away from all of you in 1787. This is my little slice of heaven. Kind of getting on the Brandywine on both sides of the line, and frankly, it is so important that we protect these places that folks are treasuring right now. And so I just can't say enough from the bottom of my heart, from the entire National Wildlife Federation family, how grateful we are for the work you're doing, and asking you to do even more, because the work we do right now has never, never, never been more important. So thank you very much for having me today. I look forward to working with you to get out of this recession and beyond.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers today for sharing their perspectives on why clean water is so important to all of us. My name is Rachel Rosenfeld, and I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Sierra Club, which has 33,000 members across the state of Pennsylvania. We are a member-led statewide environmental organization, and we believe our open spaces, clean water, and natural resources should be protected so that current and future generations may enjoy them. Today, I am joining our celebration from the Lehigh Valley, located in the heart of the Lehigh River Watershed, which is the second largest tributary of the Delaware River. Our work here focuses on clean water advocacy, outreach, and education within the Delaware River watershed, building constituency and community empowerment to protect our essential water resources in the region. I'm excited to be participating in PA Clean Water Week and grateful to all of you for your participation all week long. In this time of social distancing, when we are unable to organize in person, coalition members and watershed groups across Pennsylvania wanted to offer meaningful ways we can continue to come together to show our genuine support for PA's waterways. PA Clean Water Week has been a week-long digital celebration of our vibrant rivers and streams. Throughout this week of action, you have been posting to social media, educating your communities about PA's watersheds, engaging in creative virtual art and storytelling activities, and now coming together virtually as one community to recognize the value of clean water. We have collected your digital celebration actions all week long on social media and have composed a celebration slideshow showcasing all of your wonderful contributions. So without further ado, I'm honored to share with you the slideshow composition of all of your wonderful photos, art, poetry, and so thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi. So if I transitioned everything correctly, which hopefully I did, and hopefully you are hearing me now. My name is Renee Reber, and I work at PennFuture. I'm also the state lead for the Choose Clean Water. And this week, seeing it all come together, both the legislative pieces, asking for our state agencies and interstate basin commissions to be funded during these uncertain times, and also this innovative digital Clean Water Week. You know, it was important to me that we had a slideshow of all the celebration activities that folks have been doing across the state, and it was really wonderful to see that come together in the slideshow. But the slideshow, you know, it only captured, we couldn't even capture everything that was put out there online. So thank you everybody who participated. Thank you everyone that posted the photos that didn't make it up there as well. Definitely want to thank all of our speakers for coming on today and sharing their passion and their watershed stories and celebrating clean water with us. Definitely can't thank the planning committee enough. Thank you all for your help. And thank you all for showing up today to this video so that we could celebrate our waterways. You know, I spent this past week cherishing and highlighting all of the great things of clean water, our rivers, our streams, but the work still continues. So I hope you all will continue to celebrate and protect our waterways moving forward. Thank you all and have a great, wonderful day.